Hi guys, this is Angie here. I was challenged to make a tutorial video for Slushy's Social. It's a Facebook group that I'm part of. So I had a lot of people kick around different ideas for me, but I settled on how to do a mask. So these are the masks that we're doing. Everybody's wearing masks now. I've had tons of people request for me to make them masks, and a lot of people are asking me to share my pattern. Well, I don't actually have a pattern, so I thought I'd just quickly show how to make them. They go a lot faster if you do production line style. You can see here I have like a million cut out, and I do it like this, and then I'll sew one part on all of them, and then I'll go back and do the next part on all of them. So if you do that, it's a lot faster than just doing one. But I'm going to show you one today so that you kind of get the idea of how easy it is to make a mask for yourself. So you start with a pattern. Mine is just a piece of cardstock, 9 inches along the bottom, 6 inches along the side. This is for an adult. If you want a pocket for a filter, add just a little bit more onto the height of it. This one is without a filter. So you have your pattern. There's a couple ways to transfer the pattern onto the fabric. You can see I have little pinholes all through here. I just pin it onto usually anywhere from 2 to 4 fabric pieces at once and cut through them all at once, just right along the outside of the pattern. The other way you can do it is you can just measure using one of these. This is the best kind of ruler that you can use for sewing, and you can just measure it and use one of these friction pens. They disappear with the ironing, so you can just measure a square, or you can lay this down if you're better at that and tracing it and cut it out. But for me, I just put the pattern right on the fabric and cut it out. So you can see I have fabric cut out here. I'm doing the cherries. It's the most popular pattern that I'm doing right now of fabric, and then I'm putting a little patriotic one on the back. These can be worn both ways, but if you're doing that, you want to make sure when you wear it that the folds are down. So when you wear the other side, same thing, you're going to flip it over so the folds are down. It just helps catch less here on the creases. So this is one that could be double-sided. I cut it out into the 9x6. I ironed it. You're going to use your iron a whole bunch. So just iron them so that they're perfectly flat and together. You need 2 pieces of elastic that are 7 inches long. So I found some pink elastic in my stash, but elastic is hard to come by, so you can also use t-shirt yarn. So I cut this out of a big piece of fabric that I had of knit fabric, but you can just cut this right out of t-shirts as well. You just cut about 1 inch to 1.5 inches wide, and then when you pull it, it rolls up like this and becomes yarn. And these are really comfy for earpieces. So you can do either way, the t-shirt yarn for the elastic or just regular 7-inch elastic. So I've got my 2 pieces. I've got the right sides together. So that means the pretty side, both of those are together. You see the ugly outsides. And then I put 1 pin in the middle just to hold it into place. So this is prepping, got all these pieces. And then we're going to go over to the sewing machine. Okay, so I've got my fabric here at the sewing machine. I'm starting on the bottom. So on this one, it doesn't really matter because the fabric isn't directional, but you'll start on what will be your bottom. So we're going to make a 1/2 inch seam. So that is making your fabric be right up against the edge of your foot here. So it's really easy to keep it straight when you're just right on here. So we're just doing a straight seam. So start off, make sure that you back stitch so that it sets it in place. And then we're going to go down to the corner. All right, when you get almost to the corner, stop. You're going to put your needle down, lift up your pressure foot. Then you're going to get a piece of your elastic here. And you're going to just put it right in to the corner. You'll want it just on a diagonal so that the edge of your elastic is right in the corner of your fabric. And this is where it was good to have that 1 pin so that the fabric doesn't shift when we do this. So put your foot back down, sew, needle down, and then we're going to turn. This is going to put the elastic right into your corner. So make sure that your elastic is out of the way, usually just by pulling it down just straight in over here. And then we're just going to go to the next spot. Same thing, we get to the corner. We're going to take this, make sure that because you laid it flat, it shouldn't be twisted in there. You're going to go right to the corner, down, and then you're going to turn. So this one is just long straight. You don't have to stop for anything. So we're just going to go all the way down to the bottom. Then we get to the corner again. Same thing we did before. Just going to put that in there on a diagonal so it points right to the corner. If it's off a little bit, it's totally fine. Put our foot back down. Needle down so we can turn. Now make sure that that elastic laying flat and just out here at an angle. You can see my fabric is a little tiny bit off, totally fine. Okay, so we're gonna attach this down here. There might be a little lump because the elastic is bigger. Just push that lump out towards the middle so that you have it smooth here on the corner. Now on this one, we're going to leave an opening so we can flip it. So we're just going to come out a couple inches. Now back stitch, just set it in place, and then we can go ahead and cut our strings. Next part is we're going to cut some bulk out of the corners here. So got my scissors, and just each corner, do not cut the elastic. You want the elastic end in, but just the fabric. So we're just going to do that on all the corners. So that's 8 pieces of fabric. You're cutting the corner. Once again, don't cut the elastic. You want the elastic to be longer so that it holds in place and doesn't come out. This will take some of the bulk out when we turn it. So we've got that all cut. We're going to go ahead and turn. So that's just taking the right sides and pushing them out. You can use the elastic here to pop the corners. If you have any corners that are difficult, you can use your scissors to just kind of push a little bit. Don't poke too hard, but by using the elastic, unless it's off a little bit, you should easily be able to just pull your corners right out. And then you can see we're to this part of the mask. Okay, so we have our mask to this point. The bottom is still open. We've turned it right side though. So next thing we're gonna do is iron. So you're gonna make sure, you might have a seam tucked in there. You can pull it out a little bit. The part that's gonna be the front, like showing people the mask, you're gonna want that to curl over just a little bit over the back side, and you can just kind of manipulate that as you go and iron. So we're gonna iron this. Make sure that you iron the elastic corners here. That's gonna make it easier to sew over. And then you're also going to want to really iron this bottom part that's open, because we're gonna sew it shut as we do the pleats. So we want it to be held in place. So we're just making this mask really, really flat. And you can see since we took the bulk out of the corners look beautiful. And the iron, the heat from it also sets the stitches. All right, so you can see, here we are now. Next, we're gonna fold the pleats. This is a part that everyone thinks is a little bit tricky, but it's actually really simple. I don't measure anything out. I'm just gonna take a bottom part here and fold it across both bottoms and just kind of push on the side I'm not pinning right away. Because we just ironed it, it's nice and warm and flat, it's gonna fold nicely. So we're gonna take our pin here on one side and then the other. We're gonna do this 2 more times so that there's 3 pleats. So next part, we're just gonna take it, fold it down, push right there on the side I'm not pinning right away. You can see it just kind of holds it in place. This pin will go here. Make sure that it's catching the back, that it's nice. So it's very easy to feel because we're just going straight across. You want to keep your sides as straight as possible, but if they're not, that's okay. It's not a huge deal. So this is the last pleat. I'm gonna pin this. Then it folds easily since it was folded at the beginning. We're gonna fold here, pin. Then we're gonna match the sides. So I do this just to make sure that they're the same size. It doesn't matter if each mask is the same, but you want both sides. So you can see one is a little bit bigger than the other one. So we're gonna just take this and we're just gonna fold that down, pin it, and then check, and it looks good. Both sides are the same size. All right, next we're gonna stitch all the way around the mask. Since this is a multicolored fabric and I'm just using white thread, to start off, I'm gonna look for a little white square to start in, and this works with any time you're using like a multicolored fabric. And just your start and end, add a little bit more thread so you can tell. So if you match it right into a corner of the same color, it won't be as noticeable, just to make it a little bit prettier. So I've gone in just the next notch on my foot here to go around the first time. So you can see I'm not on the edge anymore. I've gone a little bit closer. So we're gonna go ahead and start. So you always back stitch to hold the stitch in place. And I started where my opening is. So we're gonna kind of close that opening right off the bat. So make sure that the pleat is out of the way. You can catch the pleat and you don't want to do that, then you have to unpick, and unpicking isn't fun. So just gonna move it out of the way, come down to the end. Now when we go down the side, I'm actually gonna do the full 1/2 inch. So it's okay to be not very far from the side. That's what you want. So put our needle down, turn, and you can see this is 5/8. It's even more than a 1/2, and that's great. It's gonna just put our pleats intact, and then we're gonna sew again later towards the edge. So use your elastic to pull it forward if it gets stuck over the bolt. Make sure you pull your pins out before you sew over them. You don't want to break a needle. So come down to the next pleat, pull the pin, next pleat, pull the pin. And that was very easy. You can see to go over the pleats. A lot of people are saying it's tricky to go over the pleats. Super easy because we ironed it so the fabric is really nice and crisp, and we also went closer to the middle. So we're going to come out here, put our needle down to turn, and you can see I'm right back on that line where I started, so the top and bottom will match. We'll just go all the way across the edge here. Okay, now we're back to this side. Same thing, we're about 5/8 of an inch from the edge, and that's totally fine. So we're going to go a little bit in. Before we get to the pin, we'll pull it out. Get to the next pleat, pull out the pin, and pull out the pin from our bottom one. All right, so this one we're going to be meeting our little friend here where we started. Make sure your pleat's out of the way, and make sure that this thread is pulled down so that we don't run it over and get it stuck up here. So we turn. We're going right to where we began, that same little white square, and then we're going to back stitch just a little bit to set the stitch. And then we can go ahead and cut these, and then we're going to move right in to the next part. So this is a top stitching very close to the edge. I do have a line here on my machine on the foot that I can use, or I can just go right along the edge. But this is going to really close up this seam. You can see where we just didn't quite push it out all the way when we ironed. This is going to make all these pleats go down, and it's going to catch our elastic. So this part is really important. So we'll go ahead and start here. We're going to stop here on these corners. We're just going to go a little bit diagonal, a couple stitches, and then down over our pleats. Diagonal, and then down the long edge. Okay, diagonal a couple stitches. This just locks that elastic in. All right, and this is where we're going to catch up with this one, so we just make sure that all these threads are out of the way. Okay, so it's now sewn. Next we're going to iron again. So our mask is technically done, but there's one more step that's really important. If you've done any sort of official sewing classes or anything, you'll know that ironing is something that you always do over the stitches, and that just melds the thread into your fabric. So it's going to make it look nicer, but it's also going to make it stronger because they kind of blend together. One thing I've heard people say is by pinning or anything like that, then we're allowing little holes for germs to come through. But when you iron, it's actually going to put those right back together, and it just makes everything nice and tight. So I start with the right side up, which is our cherries. And I'm gonna go through and just run the iron over all the stitches I did, hit the corners, and it just pushes that thread right into the fabric, just kind of melds it together like it's one. So once I've gone all the way around that, I'm gonna turn it over. So this is our back side. We're gonna do that next. And the reason I do the back side second is I like to open it up and just kind of run an iron through it, because this is the part where people are going to be putting their faces in. So I just kind of take the pleats out of the middle. We'll fold it back up, but it makes it so there's not so much of a permanent crease there. And there you have it. Our mask is done. Ta-da!